Hello and welcome to Property Mastermind Podcast, episode 217. Today we are talking tips on finding great property development sites. Bob and I will unpack a few things that you need to know to make sure your site is a great site. Let's jump on in. Hello and welcome to episode 217. I'm Hilary Saxon and this is Bob Anderson. Welcome, Bob Anderson.
Oh, thank you, Hilary Saxon. Great to be here. Very formal.
I know. I generally take a couple of takes on the start. I was messed it up the first time. I think it's just a little habit that I have going, but I just mix it up every time. And I'm going to say the usual, Bob. Any tips?
A tip? I don't really have a good tip this week, but it's maybe about getting back to the gym again. Don't keep away from the gym for too long. I've had a bit of a break. And during the holidays, we started going back, and I'm walking around like a cripple. Maybe I think the tip is when you start back at the gym and you've been off for a while, take it easy. I just launched in there like I had no break. Now I'm walking around like a robot.
Yeah, that's a fabulous tip, and it's pretty true as well from my background industry, the fitness industry. Yeah, take it easy when you go back. But interesting that you talk about that, Bob, because when we listen to our body, because they say listen to your body. And I'd injured myself last year pulling in a great big fish, not even joking, tore my rotator cuff on a fish that was so big. But I listened to my body and I rested it. And then I ended up rehabbing it for about 6 months with Dynabands, which just is horrific. The interesting thing was that the physio said to me, I should never have listened to my body and stopped exercising. He said that was the problem. So that's another wee tip. Maybe don't listen to your body at times. It was a bit of a BFO for me, blinding flash of the obvious. And before we get started, let's give away the book. And this week, the book goes to Jono Culpepper. Jono, the book is in the post to you. And thanks for the great chat we had this week. And I know you are going to do fabulously when it comes to property development. Okay. Now, let's talk about great property development sites, Bob. And I've got a list of questions that I'm going to run through. Not a list, just a few that would be useful. I try and think of questions that new property developers or people looking for sites would find interesting. So let's start off with, in your opinion, after over 40 years of hunting for sites, after working with so many mentoring students and teaching them how to find sites, what would you say, I'm going to ask for the number one thing, the first thing you look for when it comes to deciding on whether a site is great or not? What would be the number one thing you look for initially?
Well, initially I look at the zoning because I'll make the assumption that I've got an idea of what I'm looking for, whether it's a duplex site, a small subdivision or townhouse site. Let's say I made my mind up. I know what I'm looking for, right? So zoning's everything because it tells you what you can and can't do on a parcel of land, and that's the first thing I look for is zoning. I've seen people get really excited sometimes because they find a block of land that's a bit bigger than usual. Like they might find 1,000 square metre lot, and they say, "Oh, great! That's I could do maybe 3 townhouses on that because it's bigger than usual." And not realising that it's zoned for a single house, maybe, or tops a duplex. So, zoning number one.
There you go. Tip for the day. The number one thing you start with is zoning. So I suppose the next question I want to ask you is what makes a site great? Like if we're not just a good site, what makes a great site?
Yeah. Sometimes you can look back and say that was a great site because you made a great profit, but you don't always know it at the beginning. I mean, you expect to make a profit, you do your feasibility, but a great site would be one that doesn't seem to have any issues, I guess. And there's not many of them around. But when you look at it, it's the perfect slope, the perfect size. It's right in the area where you want it, maybe even the street where you want it. Getting storm water off the site, getting sewage connections, everything just looks too good to be true, and might be until when you dig deeper. But that's a great site, I guess. Besides being a really profitable one, which is really what we're doing it for, is one that it just seems to flow. It's just easy. Everything's easy about it. And property development's not always like that, as we know. There's often little detours and speed bumps and things we've got to deal with along the way. But occasionally you finish a project and you look back and you think, wow, if only they were all like that.
That's interesting.
So I might say that's a great site, particularly if you made a really good profit on it, particularly maybe if you made more profit on it than you thought you would when you started.
How many times have you done that, Bob? How many times have you made more profit than you thought?
Well, probably more often than I've made less profit than I thought. And I think the reason for that is that what would give you more profit, let's say, than at the end than you thought at the beginning? And often it's because the market's gone up during that period of time. So if you're doing a 2-year project and you're buying a site now and you're selling them and, getting all your approvals and building and selling in, say, 2 years' time, let's say it's a 2-year project, well, the market may have gone up in that 2 years. And so that's all extra profit that you make. The townhouse might have been worth $1 million when you bought the site, and it's 1.1 when you get there, and there's 3 of them, so they make an extra 300,000, all other things being equal. But then, because some markets correct sometimes as well, and they go down a bit, and so you might make less, or you might have had some problems that have taken longer. Project that takes longer costs more in interest. All sorts of things can happen. But more often than not, the market goes up for a lot longer than it goes down. And so purely looking at the market and the increase in values, you're going to make more in the long run than a market correction where you make less. But there's so many other moving parts, as you know, to a property development other than just the sale price. And so you've got to get them right.
You brought up so many great points there, and I wanted to sort of open up and go down little rabbit holes on each one. But we did start that with, there's always the perfect site is great. And when you look back, you go, oh, wow, that was so good. It was a dream run. But you also alluded to the fact there's always something. And we almost did this week's podcast unpacking a full development we recently finished and changed our mind and went to this one. But while we were discussing that, we went over some of the things that did go wrong, and they're so minor, but there's always going to be something, finding a swimming pool or things not being completed or, rain and delays or things that do happen on the way, which is the reason we, get for the margin, the reason you have to reach that development margin for finance, because there are going to be things in some cases that reduce profit and some things that increase profit. And you just don't know sometimes. And they're never going to be that big, but that's why the margin is there to buffer that, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we hope they're not going to be that big. But even in, say, our construction, when we're building our duplex or townhouses, whatever we're doing, we always have a 5% contingency in our feasibility. So if let's say the build price for something was $1 million, we'll always have $50,000 spare as a contingency. And we do that when we do a feasibility. The financier will insist on it. The valuer will put it in there. And that's for just things that might happen during the building stage that might cost a bit more. But no, you're right. The profit is the buffer. If you think what you sell something for less what it costs you is your profit. So that profit is a buffer. You have to lose all your profit before you come back to taking your first dollar of cost. So that's a decent buffer.
Yes. And I remember maybe 2 years ago, we had a mentoring student finish a site, and the projected profit was going to be over 500,000. And there were some corrections in the market, and things had gone on for that person. So that buffer really carried them through. And thank goodness they had you to, help them through that, Bob, because there were things that happened that you were able to sort reasonably quickly, and then the market changed. So the profit, instead of being up over that 500,000, ended up being around that 350 or whatever that was. But that is going to happen, and that's the reason that there is profit. That's the reason that the margins are there, and like, you don't scoff at that, really, do you?
Don't scoff at 350,000, no.
No.
But
when was the last time you went to work for sort of 18 months on the side?
As a side gig?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. You could drive Ubers, pack shelves at Woolies as a side gig, mow lawns on the weekend.
You ain't going to make 350K.
I've actually done all of those things in my life.
Oh, I think you drove taxis, not Ubers.
I did. Flipped hamburgers at my sister's takeaway. I've done all sorts of stuff. Anyway, besides that, yeah, look, it's how you look at something. If you thought you're going to make 500,000 and the market went soft, there was an oversupply of product, it took longer to sell, building went a little bit over, and instead of making 500, you made 350. Like, you could say, get really disappointed about the 150 you didn't make, but I'd rather be really excited about the 350 I did make, because, the next time when I'm thinking I'm going to make 500, maybe I'll make 600. Maybe the market won't be soft. Maybe there won't be no supply, and the market will be normal, and it'll just go up a bit.
And the great Bob Anderson takeaway that you taught me once when I was selling one of the last properties I had in New Zealand, and you said to me, because I got an offer within 12 hours of putting it on the market, it was almost like something we sold recently, or just instantly sold. One of the first people that went through just said, I'll buy it. And it made me think, should I leave it on the market longer? Could I get more? And you said to me, which were great words, and I've used them in the past, you never go broke making money. And if you risk that, put a risk it on the biscuit, if you decide to hold off for a bit longer, and maybe something does happen, you do. I was making money anyway. You do run that risk of not making the money.
Yeah, it makes you think that, doesn't it? When you sell something too fast, so you get interest really quickly. We did that recently on a project where the first day of a house, in the first 20 minutes, somebody bought a unit, and oh,
wow,
is that too cheap? But we were happy to say no. You put a price on it, but yeah, well, that's life.
Yeah. So we've gone down the zoning number one, definitely starting with zoning, and then what was number two?
Well, I haven't said number two, but the typical things I'm looking for that often inhibit, like we're talking about finding a site. Zoning, the first one, make sure you can do what you want to do. Size can be an issue because a lot of the time you have to have a certain size block of land to do a certain thing. Like a duplex. Some councils say you have to have 800 metres to do a duplex. Some councils say you have to have 600. There's not much point if you've got 400 and the zoning's right. So zoning first tick size, because often size is quite important. Can you fit on what you want to fit on? And it's quite possibly a regulation with council that there'll be a minimum lot size for doing townhouses, let's say. And so zoning size, that's the first two. I'm just talking about the really simple stuff, the real broad brush stuff that you look at, and you can look at it quite quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, zoning you can pick up. There's so many places you can find out zoning these days, other than contacting the council, council websites, all sorts of things. So zoning, size, they're the first two. And you might put a line through it, but first one's a tick, next one's a cross.
And Bob, how do you go with that feeling of, I'm so excited, first one's a tick, second one is a cross? Are you quick to go, I'm done with that? Or do you sort of think, how could I make it work? Do you sit and ponder it, or do you actually just let it go?
I don't ponder it too much, but I know there can be a little bit of latitude as well. I think of a council I used to do townhouses in. It had a particular zoning designation for townhouses, and they said you had to have a 600 metre lot. But I've done them on 580 metre lots. And knowing from talking to town planners that if you satisfy other requirements to do with design and setbacks and everything, that they will let you go a bit below that figure. So sometimes there is a bit of discretion, and that will very much depend on council, which council, and even their attitude at the time. But if you're in the market, in property development, talking to people, talking to town planners and the like, then you would know that. That's just an example of why I wouldn't be arbitrary. 600 metres, it's 595, I can't do it. Not necessarily.
So how often, if that happens for you, how often would you say challenge it, or just have a discussion with your town planner? What would be just a wee discussion saying, hey, what's their attitude right now? Are they a little bit laxed here? Has anyone else sort of got one of these through? Because I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm wondering if because of the current housing demand that we have, or look at it the other way, the shortage we have here in Australia, is that helping councils become a little bit more relaxed in some towns and some cities?
Well, not all councils are the same, as we know. Some are more
Don't start me.
Some are more pro-development. Some are, not necessarily say anti-development, but they make it a lot harder for you to get approvals. And so obviously try and work in the ones that are a bit more gung-ho about property development. But a lot of the pressure on housing, it starts federally. I mean, the federal government's made big promises that everyone knows they can't keep on housing. And then it sort of filters through to the states. And it's the states that try and put pressure on the councils. And quite a few councils have had pressure put on them from the states to increase densities. And some councils are resistant. Councils are the real grassroots. They're at the bottom of the whatever it is. And bottom of the heap. And it can get very personal for councils and councillors. let's say like a state representative politically has quite a different outlook on the economy and a whole heap of things than an alderman, an alderwoman, or whatever you call them, the elected member of a council.
Do you think a lot of that, Bob,
It's very like
political?
Well, it's real grassroots stuff. It's and they're more swayed by public opinion, and so in terms of like councils, some are taking notice of what a lot of the state government's saying. They're increasing densities, and some aren't.
Yeah, I hear you.
I can remember one council I was dealing with. There was an election, and a lot of really almost environmental activists got elected to council, like a number of members in the council, and that council became quite anti-development.
Is that Noosa? Because you do hear that the Noosa District Council can be a little bit green.
And I mean, green's good. Don't get me wrong.
No, green is good.
But I mean, like radically so.
Yes.
And I think it goes beyond that. A lot of them are like socialist minded and don't like people making money. But we'll get off that.
I wanted to unpack it, but we won't.
But you're right about Noosa, and years ago it used to be even more so. They had a mayor that was really anti-development, and some of the locals didn't mind it because all they wanted to do is live in a house, and Noosa's a beautiful place, and they didn't want apartments around, and they didn't want this and that, just wanted a lovely seaside village. But councils, not my best friends often, but there is some really good ones. And we've just had a great experience with a council on an industrial development. Hey.
Oh yeah, we have had.
They've gone out of their way to help us and even speed things up. They even come back to us and said, "Oh, look, if you do this and this and get it into us now, it'll speed the whole thing up." And it was outside the normal process that you do. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's some councils I really like.
Yeah, but we were just talking about whether it's worth talking to your town planner and just getting the feel on what's happening within the council that you're dealing with right now, if they're being a bit more relaxed about things. Yeah. So no's not always no.
It'll be a private town planner that you need to talk to, not the council town planner.
Okay, so we're underway there. We've sorted out the zoning and we've looked at the size and size matters. Your words, not mine. And
you want to take that a bit further?
No.
Frontage too. I didn't mention frontage, but frontage can be critical because there's a lot of times when it's the correct zoning, it's the correct size, but the frontage is too narrow. Particularly cul-de-sac blocks. A lot of councils won't let you develop those, but some do. And so my first 3 ticks, zoning, size, frontage, and then I start to look at things like services.
Right. And what tools are your favourites? I mean, there are so many available now for people to use for site finding. So, what are your favourite tools or methods you use just for your initial screening?
Yeah, well, some of them are free. I mean, it's always good to use a free tool. But as you know, we have some paid tools that we use as well. National Property Data, RP Data, those. But the council websites can be great. And it varies from council to council. Some council websites really don't tell you a lot, but some are fantastic. Like, in the region we live, they're very good. So you can jump on a council website there and you can have a look at the site, the zoning, the size, those things I mentioned previously. And then you can have a look at things like the services, which are important. Where's the stormwater? Where's the sewage? A contour map to show you the slope of the site. This is all without getting out of your chair and going and looking at the site, which you will have to do at some point.
Yeah.
Can't do everything out of your chair. Any overlays that might affect the zonings, like zoning overlays, like things like bushfire or
flooding. Yeah,
flooding, those sorts of things. They'll all show up there. And so you can do an enormous amount of due diligence in probably 30 minutes alone there. Other things, well, you can do even more than that. You can look at development permits that are going through. Who's doing them? What do they look like? There might be one, a project we did recently, somebody that we know quite well, about 3 houses down the road, I bought a site to do it. And so, they could look at our site, we could look at their site. You can look at any site that's close to yours and see what they're doing on it through the council website and through the applications that have been lodged. And you can see the architect's plans, the report from the town planner, all those sorts of things. So some council websites are fantastic and they're free for gathering information and due diligence information first up.
So there are, like you say, free tools and there are paid tools. Which is your preference over RP data, national property data, or you don't really have one, or you just use them both?
Look, we tend to use national property data more than RP, and there are some reasons why it's better than RP data. They're a bit more up to date actually than RP, and a little bit more accurate. But then there's a few things with RP that we prefer. So, I mean, you don't have to get two.
No.
I mean, we do because we boots and all in, but. If I flipped a coin, I might go national property data, but there's somebody who's used to using RP, so no, I love RP. Well, yeah,
we give it away actually.
Good too.
With our mentoring program.
Yeah.
We give away access to national property data. So it was a bit of a leading question. I was wondering if you'd answer that. I don't always know what you're going to say, so it's not like this is a scripted thing.
I don't know.
There's a rough bit of paper here, and I just kind of run my way down it. But
yeah, I think listeners and viewers need to know that this is not. We don't sit down and contemplate this thing for hours and who's going to say this and who's going to say that, because it wouldn't look real. The reason our podcasts flow is because half the time I haven't got a clue what you're going to ask me.
And I just try and think, what would somebody really want to know? So probably if we're going to talk about the next step, let's talk margins, Bob. What's your favourite way, or what do you do to, well, I know you're going to use a feasibility calculator. That's going to be the answer. But tell me your process with the development margin.
Well, when we're talking about development margin, for those that aren't familiar with it, it's an indication of the profitability of your project. And without getting too mathematical, and you're going to love this bit because you always do.
I know what you're going to say.
It's when you do a feasibility and it's your profit as a percentage of your total costs. And we're looking for a percentage. It could, if we're working on duplexes, it might be 15% or whatever that we're looking for. And so that's the margin. It's a margin that we want to know there's enough buffer, there's enough profit, it's a safe enough project to do. Also the financiers, of course, want to know it as well. And
this alludes back to the beginning where we talked about sometimes if there are some wins and some losses, less profit than you thought, more than you thought. But this is the reason, or one of the reasons, that you need to have a particular percentaged margin as profit.
Yeah, absolutely right. And eventually we do that with our feasibility calculator, which you get for free in the course. Now there's a plug. You
can drop two in there.
Drop two in there, why not? But initially what we're looking for, it comes down to this. Let's say you know your product, you know your area, and so you've got to have a pretty good idea what a site's worth. So you might be looking at doing, say you're looking at doing an upmarket duplex somewhere, Central Coast, Gold Coast, Central Coast, let's say it's an upmarket duplex near the beach somewhere. And you know your area really well because you have to, because that's your patch. You need to be a local expert. So you've got a pretty good idea what sites sell for. And it might be that you're looking for a site up to 1.6 million, pick a figure. And so one comes on at 1.55, or it's up for auction and the agent's sort of suggesting, 1.5, 1.6. And you automatically like, well, that's in the strike range. That's in the strike range of what I'm looking for in this particular area. If there was one at like 1.9 coming up, well, it's probably not going to work unless there's something really special about it. Unless it was bigger than usual, or it was right on the beach, or whatever that would mean you could sell your product for more money.
Absorb that difference, and
yeah. But unless it was something really special, and it was just average, and the average should be 1.6, and 1.9 is not going to work. It could be a good reason why it's 1.9. It might have a really nice house on it that's worth 1.9, and anybody looking for a nice house in the area would pay 1.9. But you want to knock it down and build a duplex, so you can't pay 1.9. That could be the reason. So you've got a pretty good idea before you even start. And so what you do quickly, like zoning, good for a duplex, size, good for a duplex, frontage, good for a duplex. And then you start looking at things like service connections and other things. And you'll be on the council website pretty quickly to have a look at those things I just talked about. Jim, you've got a good council website. And so not necessarily jump straight onto doing a detailed feasibility, but quickly do those broad brush things that look good, and then you can start to tighten it up.
Tighten it up by putting those numbers into a feasibility calculator and coming up with the old press the dot and look at the end and see if the margins, if it reached that margin, and not just. There's a bit more to the margin than that. So that there's one to absorb that buffer, but the other one is you're going to need finance at some point, whether you need it initially for purchase or just when you go to construction. So that's got to satisfy a financier. And I feel like I say that every week on the podcast because I think that people don't realize that. There are the conversations that I generally have with people. I think that the BFOs, the blinding flashes of the obvious, are that just the margins there for a reason. Also that it's going to be commercial finance, not residential finance. You will not have to service it. So that does not matter. It doesn't matter what you've learned in the past from old courses from yesteryear. That's not a thing unless you're a doctor, basically. The other big takeaways that people don't realise, what are they, Bob? The big mistakes that are in people's heads right now, the myths.
I think that's the two that I had in my head, is that commercial finance, it's not based on serviceability like your home loan.
Yep.
And some people, like you say, think, it makes 300,000. I'm happy with that, but it might need to make 400,000 to reach the required margin for the financier. So, like you just said, it doesn't matter what you think. You might be prepared to take the risk and make less profit, but the financier won't. There'll be benchmarks you have to meet.
And that's often the reason why people that have gone down the property investing road, which was me too, it was easy to start buying houses and stockpiling those, but you get to that point where you are hamstrung because you can't borrow any more money. You've reached your maximum, and then you're at the mercy of waiting for the market to increase, and depending on what's going, sometimes we get fast increases, sometimes we get none and it's slow, and you get sort of stuck in that point. And that's often why people will come to developing, because they realize, I don't have to service that loan anymore. I'm not going to be assessed on all of that unless you're drawing equity from your house or however you're finding your deposit, coming up with your equity. But I do think those are the major reasons why I end up having chats with people because of that.
Yeah. And, investors move over all the time into property development, the more entrepreneurial ones, because you can create an investment property for yourself at absolute raw cost, way less than retail.
Cheaper,
and you can build a portfolio much quicker. So it makes sense to transition. People hit the wall eventually, buying investment properties using retail finance, serviceability, equity, something's going to stifle them. And of course, we know what happens on occasionally, like when interest rates did go up a few years ago and people got really squeezed on that. And also when they switched a lot of people from interest only to P&I, they got squeezed even more. Property development is great for making money in a 2-year time frame, make a lot of money, but also for holding long term and acquiring property hundreds of thousands of dollars below valuation.
And I know we've brought this up before in other podcasts, but this is all when you set it up at the start, knowing the outcome you want. If you are going to keep that changes the structure that you do the development in. So all of that stuff up front is actually quite important to know. There are lots of those little moving parts. Bob, the next question I want to ask you, then we've just roughly covered the margins there, is what are the 3 most common mistakes you see with people looking for sites or finding sites?
Well, I think one is that they try and look everywhere. We always talk about selecting a patch and then becoming a real expert in that area so that you know all the values, the movers and the shakers and the agents and everybody in there. I think somebody thinking, well, the bigger the area I have, the more easily I'll be able to find a site, because there'll be a lot more available if I look at 8 suburbs than if I look at 1 or 2.
They're just going to have a stressful anxiety attack if they look for 8.
But there's a lot of variation. You choose 8 suburbs. There's a huge amount of variation between those suburbs in values, location, transport. There's just so much variation. You can't become an expert anytime soon in 8 suburbs, but you can in 1 or 2. And you need to be an expert to really nail down a good site and prove it's a good site. And that's why we teach that.
And you're proving it to not just yourself, but to the financier and who else?
Well, the point is you probably won't get a site if you spread yourself too thin across the top.
Yeah.
If you start running around looking at 10 suburbs, because every time oh, there's a potential site. Zoning and size are good. Oh, what do they sell for here? And like you just don't know who are the agents I should be talking to here, to get confirmation. And you're running around. While you're running around, somebody who knows that area really well, they'll just come in straight underneath you and snap a little bit.
They swoop in, Bob.
They swoop in if it's any good. And you're always like coming. Well, I was going to say coming second. You're probably coming 8th or 10th, like you're not even in the race.
That kind of brings me on to my next question, which is flows from a chat I had with somebody in the mentoring program yesterday. How do developers stay motivated during the search? Because you can look at so many sites and it's not easy. And what I do say to people often, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. No one would be stacking shelves at the supermarket or doing jobs they don't want to be doing. Nothing against stacking shelves at a supermarket, but you know what I'm alluding to. If you're doing something you don't want to be doing, then you just do property development. But it's not super duper easy. There is a process to follow, and you have to find the right site, and you have to do it correctly. And sometimes, your patch is just slow right now, and it's not working for a wee bit, and maybe you have to start looking at a different patch. But how do you think developers are best to stay motivated when searching?
Well, that's probably right up your alley, more than it is mine. I think you got to realise that exactly what you just said. If it was really easy, everyone would do it. And also, you got to look at a number of sites to find a good one. But you could find one immediately. I mean, I was seeing people walk out of one of our workshops, and Sonia, I'm talking about. She walked out on Sunday afternoon out of our workshop and said, I'm going to have a deal by the end of the week. And I gave her a big smile because it's not impossible, but unlikely. Guess what? Got a call, I think it was Thursday, got myself a site, and it was a good one. It was her first project. Glenn and Sonia made over 600,000 out of that, and she found a site within a week. But that wasn't average, but it can happen. And so to keep motivated, I think you've got to realise, look, when you do find that site, it's not going to make you like $500 or $5,000 or $50,000. It's going to make you a 6-figure profit. Even a little 2-lot subby, it's going to make you a 6-figure profit.
It's a life changer.
Yeah, duplex could make you 4, 5, 600. Depending. It's life changing. So it is worth the effort. And I think also, I mean, you're a lot better at this, but sometimes just switch off for a day or two. Maybe just go away for the weekend if you're feeling like a bit burnt. But you tell me, you're the expert on this. How can they keep motivated?
I like the switch off, and I probably wouldn't have gone there because it's not a me kind of thing. But I think for some people, if it's getting to you, just decide to have a week off or some time off, switch off. But then what if you missed out on one in that time? Yeah. So, but I always think, and I said it yesterday, we make ourselves lucky. And how do you make yourself lucky? By knowing that patch, by being there. And I've seen it time and time again with mentoring students who just make themselves lucky. And sometimes it can feel like it's taking a while to find a site, but you make yourself lucky because you've made the right connections. You're talking to the right people. It's not a pray and spray approach. Search this whole town. It's like you said, it's knowing exactly what you need to do, but it's also working with the right people, having the great town planner. Yesterday, I connected people with people who I thought you would be a great connection for that person. And I'm not going to use the word using, well, I'm going to, but I don't mean using. I mean capitalizing on connections that put you at the forefront of somebody's mind. But even just as I say that, somebody might reach out to me, one of the mentoring students, and even though they're in the mentoring program, said, I actually have some cash I'd like to invest with one of the other mentoring students. That's in my head, that they just made themselves lucky because they're going to go into an investment with somebody who's already being looked after. And it's just being open to more opportunity. And I think the more open you are to opportunity by showing up for yourself, by showing up in this area, by understanding fully everything that you can about property development, by not winging it, by not only half understanding, trying to get away with not doing the due diligence on the learning process. I think that makes you way more lucky. And the luckier you are, and that's the word I use, but really it's just by putting the work in. And the work in is not just searching sites, it's understanding everything that you need to know. It's becoming a bit of a property development expert. I mean, we have our live Q&As every fortnight, And the people that turn up on that, someone asks the question and they start writing in the answers. Our students are giving us the answers because they're really passionate, and so they fully understand what's going on, which is just fabulous. So make yourself more lucky and understand property development fully. I think makes it easier to find a site. And you did allude to before, don't have too big a patch. But I will also say, when you've nailed your patch, extend it a wee bit. I think that that's an okay thing to do. Don't just use the whole thing. And you might disagree with me there, but I'm good for saying, or pick a second patch. Because if you're an expert, you have the capacity to be an expert in two, but don't be half-baked in more than one, because that will just slow the process down. Like you said, you'll end up coming 10th.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, for me, it's about doing all the little things right.
Yes,
and being consistent.
And the words of John O'Hayes,
showing up.
The 1%ers. Do the 1%ers. Reach out to the agents. Like, you've got to do all those things that make a difference. It's not like you just do one this week and go, yay, I did it, and pat yourself on the back. It's putting the hard yards in and doing it. And as we say that, it's that saying, how you do anything is how you do everything. And if you look, you and I do that. How we do anything is how we do everything. We're in boots and all in every single thing that we do. There is nothing half-baked. So I think you've got to just commit to being really good at something. And you can be really good at finding sites, or really good at understanding property development to be able to move forward and stay motivated when it comes to property development. Like, connect with as many things as you can. Come to events. I mean, our 3-day workshop, by the time this comes out, probably will be sold out, but we are having one in April next year. But, just get involved. Like, jump in, live it and love it.
Yeah.
So, Bob, that's pretty much all the questions I was going to go through for this podcast. Do you think there's anything else I need to cover off when it comes to finding a great property development site? We've really sort of honed in on those initial steps, which are important.
Yeah, I think we've covered that really well. They're the first things to do.
Yeah.
And just do them well. And like you say, don't put the time in. Don't get disillusioned because you're looking at your 8th site and it doesn't stack up. Yeah, but just keep doing all the little things right.
Be consistent. I was just going to say big congratulations to Kyle, because we mention him every week and he says, you're always talking about me on the podcast. He's got a site. So hopefully, fingers crossed, that goes ahead. I was just speaking with him this morning. So good. Fingers crossed that works. It's always good to mention somebody when they're used to hearing themselves on here. And for any of you looking at learning more about property development, feel free to reach out and have a chat to myself or one of our team. Anyway, Bob, thanks so much for giving me and the community your time, as you do. Oh, this actually on Friday night at 5:30 in the Property Developers Secrets and Hacks page. Bob and I are going live for a wee bit. So feel free to join us with a beer or a glass of wine for a Friday chitty chat about property development. Did you know we're doing that?
I do now.
We are. All right. Well, it's great. I hope you got something from this podcast and you've got a good takeaway, and we'll catch you again next week. Bye.